guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. Today is part 3 in my 2023 goal planning series. If you are interested in goal planning, then stay tuned. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary, middle, and high school. We are in our 12th year homeschooling this year. If you are not subscribed, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you are notified of all of my future videos. Let's get started. Here we are in part 3 of my goal planning. It's going to be many videos, I feel like. I mean, even when I think about planning out my goals for 2023, I have my yearly goals, my quarterly goals, and my monthly action plans for January that I need to work on. So those are 3 goal videos right there. But we are still in the planning stages of 2023. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos in this series, I will leave them linked below. It will make a lot more sense if you go through those first, because I talk a lot about my planning process and how I kind of systematically go through different things. And this is something, goal planning is something that I've been doing for many years. I really have been goal setting since high school, and I have definitely created a process that works for me that I really like. I really enjoy reflection. And so a lot of my goal planning is based on reflection in the previous year. And if you're not good at reflection or that type of introspection, my goal planning might seem a little crazy, but it is what works for me. So today we are going to be starting with choosing a word of the year. Now, I know a lot of people will choose a word after they have written their goals out for the year. That is not how I think of a word of the year. The way that I think of a word of the year is as a lens to look through when I'm setting my goals. And so I have been choosing a word of the year since 2013. That was the first time that I had heard about it, which is before Power Sheets came along for me. I think that maybe 2012 or 2013 was the first time that they had done Power Sheets, but I chose a word of the year that year. It was change. I knew I needed a lot of changes, and that was where my jumping off point was. Last year it was live. The year before it was life-giving, and in 2020 it was slow. I chose that before 2020 started. I chose it in 2019. Some of my other words were wellness, balance, intentional, action, and margin. Yes, so I tend to start thinking about my word of the year in the fall. All of my goal planning tends to start in the fall, because by the time public school is back in session and we are full on in our homeschool year, I start to see where I want to make changes in my life to make things easier or better or whatever. And so I start to think about a word of the year very early. Sometimes it's not super early. Sometimes I really struggle until right at the end of the year or even the beginning of January. And on those years, I tend to struggle with writing my goals as well, because I always look at a word of the year as more of a theme for my goals. So when in 2021, my word of the year was life-giving, all of my goals talked about life-giving. Like I wanted a life-giving home, a life-giving homeschool, a life-giving spiritual practice, all of that type of stuff. And the same with last year. Last year, my word was live. I really wanted to live my life. I was tired of kind of sitting around. I think that we had all been stuck in the same spaces for a couple of years, and I just needed to, even as an introvert, get out and do more things. So that was my priority for 2022. Now, there hasn't been a year where I have thought I want to reuse a word. And this year, I really did want to reuse a word, and the word is slow. And yeah, when I chose slow for 2020, it was for completely different reasons than what happened in 2020. I chose slow in 2019. Our house was no longer on the market, our old house. We had decided that we were going to stay in our old house. We were going to make changes to our house and changes to our life to support the lifestyle that we wanted and the life that we wanted, my husband and I. And we had just thought that God wanted us to stay in that house, and we needed to be content with that situation. So I chose slow because I wanted to methodically make the changes that we needed to make in that house to make that house our home, and looking forward to the future. However, 2020 was not, it was slow in a certain extent, but it didn't start off slow for us. We ended up getting an offer on our house when it was not on the market in January of 2020. We moved in February of 2020, and then the world did shut down in March of 2020. But our life still was going. We were still doing a lot of stuff. Our homeschool wasn't really affected by everything that happened at the beginning of 2020. It was to a certain extent because the outside activities were no longer happening, but our general day-to-day was kind of the same. But there wasn't a slow as far as an enjoyable slow where we can savor the season because there was a lot of stress during that year. So anyways, I have been thinking about slow a lot for a couple of months now. Things like slow food, slow money, slow home, just slowing down in general. I don't like to have so much busyness that I don't feel connected with my family or with my friends. I don't like to be going to 100 different things. It's not enjoyable for me. It's not the lifestyle that I want to live. And so understanding that and making changes is good. It's hard. It's hard to kind of go against the grain as far as busyness goes, but it's something that I feel I definitely need for the year. And so I did write out some of the things that what slow looks like to me. And that's what I encourage you to do. Think about a word that maybe creates the vision of what you want your life to look like at the end of 2023. And maybe use that word to guide you as you're writing your goals. Instead of thinking of words after the fact, after you've already created your goals, think of a word that really sums up your vision for the year ahead, and then write your goals after that. That's how I've always done choosing a word of the year. When I moved into the Power Sheets, they have choosing a word of the year after you've written all of your goals and your action plans and everything like that. And to me, that kind of just feels like an afterthought. Like it's not a necessary part of the goal planning process because it's just something at the end. I know a lot of people still have value in coming up with a word of the year after they've written their goals, and it can still work in the same way. It's just for my brain, it works better to think of it ahead of time. So I did choose slow as my word for 2023. I'm still trying to flesh out my goals, which is part of why I'm doing this goal planning process with you. I'm just sharing all of my thoughts, especially since I'm not using the Power Sheets or any other goal planner. I am fully committed to creating my own goals using a notebook, and that's what I've been doing. So I'm sharing all of that with you guys. So after I choose my word of the year, the next thing that I find highly valuable, and I definitely recommend you do this, is to write out a yes and no list. And this is giving yourself permission to say yes to the things that are important to you and no to the things that are not important to you. Now, do you have to hold to this list that you create at the beginning of the year? No, you don't. Obviously, it's completely up to you whether the yes and no list makes sense in the middle of the year. Maybe you need to refresh that yes and no list, and that is totally okay. It really is. But I definitely recommend creating one. And I think that the main reason is because in our day-to-day, It's very easy to either say, it's very easy to say yes to things, especially when people ask you questions when you are out, or to join things, or to do something, or something that your kids want to do. It's very easy to say yes. It can be very easy to say no to things that you really don't want to do at all, but maybe you ought to be doing those things. And so prioritizing a yes and a no list helps you to, number one, not have to think about all of those decisions daily that you have to make. I wrote a blog post in October about creating a yes and a no list, and it was through the lens of living a life you love, making the choices that support that lifestyle that you want and that your family wants, the values that you hold firm to. I will leave a link for that in the description box, because I think that really is very applicable to this video and creating a yes and no list for the coming year. Just having the permission to, giving yourself permission to say no and yes to specific things before you are asked those things is so helpful. And it gives you a reason to make that decision in the split second. You don't need to give a reason for your yes or your no. You can just say yes or no, because that's what you've already committed to. And obviously, again, you can revisit this list and cross things off or add things to it. But I know that for me, one of the things that we said no to for 2022 was public school band. And we didn't do public school band in the winter of 2022. At this, the spring semester for 2022. But then we started doing band again this fall in 2022, and it was a huge struggle. And I had written no. I had said that we weren't going to do it. Emma didn't want to do it. And then all of a sudden, we were back in the thick of things, and it wasn't the right choice for us. And so realizing that, and understanding that and moving ahead, it's kind of like I knew that that was the case, but I still said yes because I felt guilty, because Emma, she didn't feel guilty, but she, had some other priorities, and this was a way to support some of those passions of hers. But as we got into it, we kind of realized that it was the wrong decision. But we had committed. So it's definitely interesting to see that yes and no list in action when you follow it versus when you say yes or no to something that you had put on your list in the opposite column. So I definitely recommend a yes and no list. I think it's super helpful. Again, definitely look at that blog post that I have linked in the description box, because that goes into way more detail about how to come up with a yes and no list, finding out your priorities, all of that stuff. Then after I finish writing out my yes and no list, this is the point when I really start to write out my rough draft goal ideas. Now, in the last video and in the first video, I talked about the brain dump list that I have at the beginning of this notebook. It's all the things that I want to work on or hope to work on, or changes I want to make, or things we want to do, I want to do, the family wants to do, all of those types of things. And so this is the point when I kind of go back through my reflection. I don't really need to go through the reflection so much because it's all really fresh in my mind still, but I've hit on the high points and the things that are really important to me. And so when I'm going through those brain dump lists that I have under my focus areas, I can see what are the most important things that I want to work on. And those are the things that I really want to focus on in the first 12 weeks of the year. I read the book, The 12-Week Year, maybe in 2016, I think maybe. I'm rereading it right now. Let me grab it. This book is so helpful if you are setting goals. I think that this process of the 12-week year is so good. It's very informative, and it helps you narrow down your focus, which I think is important when you're setting goals. I do have 2 other books that I find incredibly helpful when I'm setting goals, and these are all 3 books that I reread regularly. It's The 12-Week Year is the first one, then Essentialism, and The One Thing. Now, I think that sometimes these books, these goal books, are goal planning, goal setting books are more geared towards business people, but I think there is so much value in all of these books. They're all incredibly short, so I definitely recommend reading them if you are thinking about goal planning, if you are looking for motivation, or just how to set goals. Those are the 3 books that I reread regularly and also always recommend. So I look at all of those lists of things that I want to do, and I kind of try to figure out where I want to focus in the first quarter of the year. And it doesn't mean that I don't focus on more than one focus area. It's just, what are the most important things that I want to do, that I need to do in my different focus areas for the first quarter. And then that is where I start to combine things and figure out a wording for the things that are most important to me, so I can write my goals down, and then I can break them down into the action steps necessary for me to achieve those goals over the first 3 months of the year, over the next 12 weeks. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. I have not written out my goals yet. I am recording all of these videos in real time. I have been spending my mornings mainly writing a lot in this notebook. I think this is how many pages, I don't know if you can see this or not. This is how many pages I have already written on. Let me see, how many pages? 28 pages I have already written in this notebook. Maybe a couple pages less because I do have a couple of blank pages, but that's all handwritten notes for 2023. So what I plan to do is I will just be going through all of my lists, and I will pull out my colored pens and markers in my different focus areas, and I will mind map things. I will combine things. I will pull out new ideas. I will cross things off that aren't necessary for this coming quarter, and I will just try to start getting down kind of my big picture vision for 2023, as well as the things that I find I want to work on in the first 3 months. These will not be my finalized goals, because then I really do need to sit down with my husband and look at our calendars and plan out how much time we have, how much time I'm going to have to work on certain things. I have to be really realistic with the resources that I have available. That is time and money. And so you might have some big dream goals, and that is great, but you may not have the time or the money to work on those goals at the moment. And so instead you have to really draw back and look at something that is very, very small, a little step that you can take to make progress when you know that you don't have the time or money to dedicate to this huge goal. What is something, you got to drill way, way down in your action plan to what is step 1? Well, if you don't have the money to work on a particular big dream goal, it might be create a budget. It might be join a savings challenge. It might be, meal planning or freezer cooking or something, and that will help you to save money so that eventually you can start using that money towards this big dream goal. So it's all about really drilling down on what's important, and it does take some time. I will be sharing my rough draft goals, my final goals, and my quarterly priorities soon, I hope. I still have to write them out. I'm not there yet. But I hope that this was helpful for you. I want you to think about your word of the year. Think about what that means overall for your year ahead. What do you envision your year being? Where do you want to be at the end of 2023? And then based on that vision, create your yes and no list. What are the things that you want to say yes to and that you need to say yes to in order to move towards that vision that you have for 2023? And what are the things that you need to say no to? Even if it's something that you love doing, in this season, you might need to say no, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you say no forever. It may just be this particular season you are saying no to that one thing. So work on your yes and no list. Read that blog post that I linked in the description box. It will give you a lot more ideas. And then start to write a mind map of your word and then how it relates to the different focus areas that you have in your life and the different steps that you need to take in those focus areas to start reaching those big goals that you have for yourself. It can be challenging to do so much introspection and really see what is important. And that's part of why I say really focus on 12 weeks, because that's pretty much all your brain can handle. Your brain cannot handle a yearly goal, because what happens is you either think that you have so much time to complete that goal, there's no urgency, or it's like it's too big and you kind of freeze and you don't know how to take the first step. So drill down on those focus areas, the progress that you want to make, and try and come up with some small steps that you can take in the new year for that first quarter to move towards that vision that you have for your life, how it's going to look at the end of 2023. I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that you are enjoying it. I'm certainly enjoying making it. There's a lot of stuff that I want to work on in 2023, and I need to definitely narrow it down. I need to narrow a lot of things down. So that's part of why slow is my word of the year. I need to slow down. I can't have so many things that I want to do because it's overwhelming to have that many things. I need to really make sure that I have a yes and no list that is applicable to our lives, but still allows some flexibility, especially as my kids want to do activities and the different things that they're passionate about. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.